Hi there, welcome to Third Space Live. I'm Jody Peel of Third Space Charity, and today's June 1st, 2020, episode number 19. Today we're going to be talking to guest Barb Egan all about catching your thinking traps. Super interesting, but before we begin, I want to remind you that you can learn all about our charity at thirdspacecanada.org. You can follow us on Facebook or Instagram. And you can also sign up for our newsletter on our website to stay in touch. All of the recordings of our shows can be found on IGTV or our YouTube channel. And before we start, I want to thank the team at Third Space Coffee for supporting the charity. You can learn more about them and order safely online at thirdspacecoffee.ca. So welcome to the show. I'm going to introduce our guest, Barb Egan, who's a regular on our show. She's a pretty impressive woman. She's a former elite hockey player and coach who transitioned into counseling after a career-ending injury. She's now a registered clinical counselor here in Kelowna at Alive Counseling Group. And she's super passionate about what she does. She loves to educate, equip, and empower others through her services. She's an amazing speaker. She also does workshops. She's got an amazing family with 3 little kids. She's also a community leader in sport and elsewhere in our community. So I'm happy and privileged to welcome Barb to the show. I'm going to unpin my image so we can say hi to her.
Mm-hmm. Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Yeah, so, I think that everybody who's watching can probably, has probably had experience of getting stuck in a negative mind trap. And you're going to talk to us about that today. Tell us what it is and what we can do about it.
Yeah, and especially during this time, of COVID, of these past 10 or so weeks that we've been trapped in our homes and probably trapped in our minds in a way too. Although restrictions are kind of less a little bit, a lot of that time in our own head or our own homes, that can really weigh on us. And it's an anxiety time, it's an overwhelming time, and just trying to bring some normalcy to that, but also some practical strategies that we can do.
That's great, because often one of the biggest barriers to building mental wellness is feeling like you're alone in your experience. So it's really helpful that everybody understands that most of us end up in these mind traps and that it's normal.
Yes. In fact, psychology research tells us that we have anywhere from about 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. And these can be fleeting thoughts like, oh, that's a nice blue lamp, to, oh, you walk past the mirror, oh, I can't believe I have so many wrinkles, or my gray hairs, or whatever going on right now. So those thoughts, those 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day, we actually know the majority of them, so about 80% are negative. We call them ants, or automatic negative thoughts.
80% are negative. Why are more negative than positive?
I think part of it is we are wired a little bit for struggle, but also for comparison. And when we're comparing, that's a thief of joy. And I'm going to go through some of these examples later, and I bet we'll all resonate with most of them, if not all of them. But a lot of them are comparing, of pressure, of feeling like I should be doing something, or this unrealistic expectation. And right now in the time that we're in, it's a lot of us are putting the same pressure on ourselves of getting things done, or work capacity, or home life, as we did before COVID, which is very unrealistic and not fair to us. But so many of us do. We think we should have the same level of productivity.
Definitely. I'm doing that to myself for sure. I see on social media, which we're all on more than usual, I think most of us are, to stay connected, seeing all these people achieving all these amazing things. I've been working a ton, so I can't relate to that, but yeah, it's easy to feel bad about yourself and start that cycle for sure.
Yeah, and then it's that downward spiral, and we start to believe our feelings. So when we feel bad or we compare, we start to feel less than or not good enough. And it's just like our filter is totally distorted. And that negative feeling feels like it's fact. And that's actually one of those kind of thinking traps, is when our feelings overtake us. So for example, here in Kelowna, it's beautiful, it's sunny, but on those days that it's been kind of gray and raining, most of our moods go kind of like Eeyore, like "Mah," very down in the dumps, kind of gray, blah. And I'm guilty of it too. I'm a mental health professional and it happens to me. And we get stuck in these patterns, even by the weather or our diet or a circumstance. But with that example of the rainy, gray days and that mood, really nothing in my life has changed in those 3 days that it was gray, other than the atmosphere, other than the weather. But my feelings dictated that and acted as fact then. And it really influenced my mood.
Great. So, yeah, and that's what happened this past weekend. We had kind of crummy weather, and I
Mhm.
felt that feeling.
Yeah.
And then I felt bad at myself for having that feeling. So maybe I'm a really good candidate for for you to walk through this today. Where do
And
we start with that?
I think we all are, for one, and that's going to be like step one of all of this is give yourself a lot of grace right now. No one has ever come through this COVID pandemic, and there's not a step-by-step guide of it. There's no way right or wrong to go through it, and each day is its own day. So even those rainy days, so for example, that it could just be permission to have one of those lazy days, or knowing that perspective often can be really helpful, of that this is not going to be forever, even though it feels like it's temporary. The sun will come out again, or as simple as that. But really that perspective is key. And one of the ways that we do this, so these negative thoughts, these ants, these automatic negative thoughts, they fuel things like stress, they fuel things like anxiety, and they fuel things like depression. We see them in pretty much everything, whether it's couples counseling, trauma, to those main culprits of anxiety, stress, and depression. If we can get to our thoughts and how we talk to ourselves, we can actually start to influence how we feel. So we'll improve our mood. And then we improve how we act. So the things that we do or the things that we don't do. So for example, this is a fancy terminology called cognitive behavioral therapy. It's kind of the gold standard of therapy, but CBT, but that's it. Thoughts, feelings, actions. And so if we can get at these thoughts, there's so much power in it. So to kind of start, I usually encourage people, write it out. So make a thought log. So I'm going to share my screen of an example of one of those. But basically it's an event. It's a situation or event, a feeling around it, and a thought. So I'm going to walk us through this because I think we can all really relate. And can you see that event, thoughts, and feelings?
I can, yeah.
Okay, so we have an event, let's say a job interview. Maybe during COVID, there was some job insecurity and now you're looking for a new one. So that's the event, you have a new job interview. Your thoughts around it, just write it down. Write it out in a simple journal, get it out of your mind onto a piece of paper, because we can convince ourselves of anything up here. So let's say some of those thoughts, again, those automatic negative thoughts are going to be really big there. I probably won't get it. What's the point? Why would they hire me? What's so special about me? And then my feelings. If I'm thinking that and telling myself that, I'm probably not going to feel motivated. I'm probably not going to feel excited. I'm going to feel anxious. I'm going to feel worried, skeptical, overwhelmed, not very confident, doubtful, even maybe timid. So I'm going to do basically the opposite of what I really want out of that. So that is a simple strategy to just begin, is to get it out of your head onto a piece of paper. Or there's a lot of great apps out there too. I really like Mindshift or Sanvello, but we can use those and get them out of our head. And even just seeing it, we get more perspective, we get more empowerment just by seeing it. And once we identify it, then we can kind of challenge it. So I'm going to then share what some of these thinking traps can look like and kind of go through some of those, because those can be in the thought patterns of when we write those down. And when we know that, okay, this is a thinking trap, it's not necessarily true, then it doesn't have as much power over us. When we think it, it feels very true, but don't believe everything you think.
Mhm.
When we know it's a trap, we're not as readily going to give into it maybe, or get caught up in it. So it's not necessarily these negative thoughts in general. They're not the problem always. It's the power we give them. So if we know it's a trap, then we can steer clear of it or not give it as much power. So for example, here are some common ones. So everything, the first one is a catastrophe. It's worst case scenario. So if something goes wrong, it's going to be a disaster. I'll never get through this. I'll never get this job. I'll probably have to move back in with my parents or my mom in her basement. And if I screw this up, everything's completely ruined. So kind of that worst case, big catastrophe. Then there's black and white thinking. So looking at something, the world, the event, all or nothing. So everything's perfect or ruined, or everything's amazing or terrible. And so that could look like I'm always horrible at taking tests. I'm never going to pass this class. I terrible at public speaking. I'm never going to speak up in my business meeting. Then fulfilling that kind of self-sabotage of that negative thought because we never challenge it. We think, oh, I can't do it, so I don't. So I just keep living that to be true. Negative filtering.
I'm pretty good at both of those first two.
and be aware, we're going to identify with all of these.
Okay.
This negative filtering is kind of the yeah, but. That's what I call it. The yeah, but. Oh, you look really good today. Yeah, but I don't look as good as so-and-so. Or it's, it's just the lighting that's making me look good. If you really saw me. Or seeing only the negative and discounting that positive. So who cares if I got that promotion? My boss still hates me. Or I'm only still hired because they can't get rid of me. Or whatever. The yeah, but. So kind of pay attention to yourself if you're ever kind of discrediting anytime someone compliments you or those compliments aren't really sticking and landing. Another one's personalization and blame. So taking that full responsibility, placing it 100% on you. So this person is angry at me. My coworker is angry at me. My spouse is angry at me. I must have done something terrible to them. I must have made them mad. Or even if it's someone just walking down the street, you smile, you wave, and they don't say anything to you, it feels like, okay, they don't like me. I must have made them mad.
I'm well versed in that one as well.
Yes. The personalization and blame. And I think a lot of people in our culture especially feel it because we are created for connection. That's kind of the silver lining there is we really want to be connected to people. And when we feel rejected, it really hurts. And then it feels like we're taking that on all of ourselves. So one of the things I like in this one is, okay, what is the percentage that it's on me? What is the percentage that it's other things going on? Maybe, so back to that example of you're walking down the street, you see a friend or an acquaintance, you wave, you say hi, and they don't say anything. Well, we could feel that personalization and blame and feel, oh, they must be mad at me or they must not like me. But if we kind of take a helicopter view, looking at the situation 30,000 feet above, we see, okay, 100% blame is not on me. It could be maybe they just got really bad news from the doctor. Maybe they were in a fight with their spouse because tensions are high and they're just in a bad mood. Maybe they're dreading going back to work or they're just overwhelmed right now. So kind of breaking up that 100% into more kind of a pie chart of percentage here. Okay, 20% here, 25% here, 15% here of these other factors too. That can be really helpful.
Yeah.
Then there's mind reading. So kind of believing the thoughts or motivations of someone else. So he thought I acted like a fool. Like when I spoke up in our meeting today and nobody said anything, then I would go to, okay, I'm mind reading. They think I'm terrible. I shouldn't even work here. I'm probably going to get fired. So that's a mix of the mind reading, worst case scenario, all of those kind of negative thinking traps can really play on to one another too. Labeling and judging. So labeling yourself or others without the full context of information. So I'm a loser. Other people are cruel. I'm not even going to reach out because nobody's going to really care for me. And we see this all or nothing kind of thinking in other ways too, but this one is really in respect to that connection piece because we do all want to be connected. But if I think that I'm not good enough or I'm a loser or other people really don't care about me that much, then it's going to inhibit me from reaching out and making those connections. So that's kind of the first little bit of it. I have a few more, but just the first few, do they resonate at all?
Absolutely.
Me too. Me too.
It's funny because I've, done some work so that I can catch myself sometimes.
Mm.
A couple of those examples, when you run into somebody maybe that you don't know that's super grouchy with you,
Yeah.
or it's not warranted.
Right.
I use some of those tools and say, well, maybe they've got bad news or their dog just died. That's my dog just died test. That's what I always do, because you never know where someone's coming from.
Right.
And yeah, it takes practice though, right? Because if that's your habit, which was my habit for most of my life, you always personalize it and think that you've done something wrong, or you take it personally, and it's kind of egotistical a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But we all do it. And it's so funny because I remember a mentor of mine saying, you know what, they're not even thinking about you because they're too busy thinking about themselves.
That'll do it, right? Yeah.
But it is so true. I mean, we all feel that way, and it can be really hard. It's a new mental skill, basically. And we know to create a new habit, there's just a new research study out saying that it takes about 66 days for us as humans to get a new habit out. So
Wait,
that
I read a
includes
book
thinking
like
patterns.
this
That includes new thoughts. Yeah. And so, take time with it. It's not gonna go like that, but it's a lot of time, a lot of consistency, a lot of repetition. It's kind of like brushing your teeth. If you never brushed your teeth up until now, if you did it now for a whole hour, nothing probably would really change for your hygiene, your mouth hygiene. But you're gonna have some sore gums. But if you do it, twice a day, 2 minutes a day, over 6 months, you look back and think, wow, with time and consistency, my teeth look great. I got great mouth hygiene. The same is true for mental hygiene. If we do it 1 hour today and we're like, yes, I resonate with that, I want to try that, but never do it again, it's probably not going to make a huge difference in our life. But if we just start to pay attention to it, not 2 hours a day, but 2 minutes a day, just quality of it. Oh, there's a thinking trap. What's another way to look at this? Or write it down, that situation, the thoughts, my feelings around it. Over time, you look back a few months, and you think, wow, I have really come a long way. And don't you know, you've got a new thinking style.
for sure, and it does get easier with time, like any other habit. It kind
Yeah.
of eventually, after 66 days,
Yeah. Yeah.
move into automatic, where you ultimately want to get to, a place where that's what you do, that's your default, instead of all those negative traps.
Right. Yes. And even just reminding yourself that most of us have a negative tendency. So when we run into someone who's grouchy with us or not as warm and loving, it makes us feel bad. But again, I loved how you shared of, okay, what's going on in their life? What's happened in their life to get them to where they're at, to make them this way? Probably those 80% negative thoughts or more too. But knowing that and being kind to ourselves, but other people too. So I'm just going to wrap up with a few more of these. Let me grab that up. Okay, great. So again, that labeling and judging. The last couple, the fortune telling, that's predicting the future as if it were certain. And I see that right now a lot, just because we're in a time of huge uncertainty. We don't have a lot of control of things. We don't know end dates. We don't know exactly what our future is going to look like. So this is a really prevalent thinking trap right now of predicting future events as if they were certain. We're never going to go back to normal. Our kids will never have school the same. I don't know if I'll ever get a job. I know I'm going to blow this, or I'm going into that job or interview. I know I'm going to forget what I'm going to say. Something that uses I know is usually a fortune telling kind of thinking trap of really being certain about how the future is going to go. Usually in this case where we're at right now, very doom and gloom, very scary looking. Emotional reasoning. So this is where you mistake your feeling as fact. So I feel anxious, so it must be overwhelming. It must be scary. And sometimes our anxiety comes out, often physically in our body, increased heart rate, dry mouth, sweaty palms, kind of on edge, shaky. And just because we're feeling anxious doesn't mean that it has to overcome us. It doesn't mean necessarily that the situation merits anxiety. Sometimes it just, we're used to it and we're hypersensitive like we are right now. And so it's going to come up probably easier. Being able to identify then that, okay, this is not necessarily fact, it's just my feeling. That can be helpful. And that's similar to that rainy day example of really my life didn't change those 3 days. It was just my feelings. And then I acted out of that. So then we have pressurized or extreme words. These are using things like always, never, can't, should. Should is the big one. That's when I know that I'm really spread thin and I need to kind of pull back and take care of myself a bit, is when I'm putting those shoulds on myself or ought tos, those pressure situations or pressure words, and then they don't make me feel any better. They don't make me feel better about the situation or myself. I should get more work done. I should work out more. I should not eat that, or whatever it is. I always screw up. I should be better. And that is just exhausting. And when we're already in a hypersensitized place right now, coming out of COVID or in it still, it's just even worse. And then finally, that overgeneralization. So it happened once, so it's going to happen every time. So I spoke up in a meeting and nobody said anything, so I'm never going to speak up again. But that's not necessarily a proper way to even look at it. You can always ask yourself with any of these of, okay, what would a friend say to me in this situation? Or what would I say to a friend? So if I spoke up in a meeting, nobody said anything, I go in my mind of the thinking trap of, I think I'm stupid, or they think I'm stupid. Maybe that's not necessarily true. If a friend were talking to me or I was talking to a friend, I would say, you know what, there's been times that I've been in a meeting and I really liked what you said. I just didn't know what to say. So I didn't say anything. And, that doesn't mean that I think you're stupid. I think it was really great. And maybe we just didn't know what to say after it or things like that. Just helping you get out of that trap. Just ask yourself, what would I say to a friend, or what would a friend say to me? And try to get a specific friend in mind, like a really good, safe friend. Not the friend that is the grouchy friend, but the really good, safe one.
Wow, it's really interesting for you to set those out like that, because I do most of them, but I've never really identified them or known that they're distinct from one another.
Mhm.
And I think that's really helpful as a first stage, just to even know what it is that I'm doing to
Mhm.
myself all the time. Step one, to try to start to catch yourself and start challenging, I guess, some of
Mhm.
those automatic responses, right?
Yeah. And it's not going to change overnight necessarily, but even those pressurized words, for example, the shoulds, it could be as simple as going, instead of should, just dial it down a little bit to could. I could work out more. Yeah, that would probably make me feel better. And then you're making a choice from a place of empowerment, and you're in the power of it, of making that choice versus the pressure. So you're empowered or there's pressure, and you get to choose what kind of stance you take there.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Thanks, Barb.
Mhm.
I'm trying to change our views so we can both sign off together, but yeah, that's really helpful. I'm going to share this video with some people in my life that I know could benefit from that. So that's great. Um, Unless there's anything else to add, we can sign off and we can invite our viewers to reach out to you. What's the best way for them to reach you directly if they wanted to talk to you?
Yeah, they could just check out my website, alivecounseling.com. A lot of this kind of info is on there. Contact me, that sort of thing. Currently, all counseling is still online for me. Like you said, I have 3 little kids, so it's a fun time, but I guarantee that even as a mental health professional, I have all of these thoughts during this time as well, too. And I think that's a huge underlying thing of just normalizing it, educating ourselves, there's a lot of power in that. And when we start to identify that, then we can challenge it. So be kind to yourselves and know that it's not an all or nothing thing, that this is going to come up and that's okay. A wise person named Ed once told me that negative thoughts are like birds flying in the sky. We can't stop them. Birds fly in the sky, negative thoughts pop up in our heads. But what we can do is keep them from building a nest in our hair. And so that could look like just catching these thinking traps, these thoughts that come up and not dwelling on them, not replaying them, not believing them or living them out. By writing it down, that event, the thought, the feeling, that's taking a little bit of power back over them. And again, those 66 days or however long that average is of creating a new habit, it's doable. The brain is so amazing. And just being able to be in community, reaching out to people, that's going to be huge too.
Great. Thanks, Barb. That's super. I love that metaphor of the bird and the bird nest.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us today. I think this is your third show.
Yeah.
And at another show. Thanks to everybody for watching. Stay tuned Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8 p.m. for our shows on Instagram and Facebook. Stay tuned also to what our charity's up to on our Facebook and Instagram accounts, as well as our website, thirdspacecanada.org. Thank you. We'll see you again soon. Have a great day, Barb.
Thanks. Bye.